Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we will dissect the morally bankrupt narrative collision of Taylor Hayes' miraculous geriatric pregnancy and Daphne Rose Walton's devastating infertility diagnosis, culminating in Sheila Carter's sinister return to the shadows of Il Giardino. It is an undeniable fact that the writers of this program possess a profound, unyielding contempt for both biological reality and the emotional intelligence of their audience. I maintain that utilizing a woman's womb as a cheap regenerative plot device while simultaneously mocking the agonizing reality of infertility is not merely lazy, it is artistically repugnant. We need to stop pretending that this show operates within the realm of acceptable soap opera melodrama. The truth is, the current trajectory of the narrative is a masterclass in cowardice and intellectual dishonesty. I am baffled by anyone who argues that the recent developments between Taylor, Daphne, Deacon, and Sheila represent anything other than a catastrophic failure of storytelling. This is not entertainment. It is a relentless, punishing insult to anyone who has ever expected a shred of psychological realism from the media they consume. The central thesis of my argument is absolute and unshakable. The writers of this show do not view women as human beings. They view them as disposable incubators, to be tortured or magically blessed solely to prop up the fragile egos of the mediocre men who orbit them. There is no excuse for the narrative atrocity we are currently witnessing. To crosscut the visceral, grounded agony of Daphne Rose Walton's infertility with the biologically impossible, insulting absurdity of Taylor Hayes' geriatric pregnancy is a moral failure of the highest order. It is a sadistic choice designed to manufacture cheap shock value at the expense of genuine human emotion. I stay not because I still love it, but because someone has to bear witness to the wreckage. Someone has to stand up and systematically dismantle the indefensible choices being broadcast into our homes. Let us begin by examining the sheer, unadulterated farce of Taylor Hayes' medical emergency. We are subjected to scenes of Taylor, a world-renowned psychiatrist, experiencing severe, crippling abdominal pain in her office. She is doubled over, clutching her stomach, acting as though she is suffering from a ruptured appendix or a terminal diagnosis. She rushes to the hospital, a place where she ostensibly holds professional clout, only to be handed a diagnosis that defies the laws of human biology, time, and basic common sense. Taylor Hayes is pregnant. It is intellectually dishonest to claim that this is a miracle storyline. It is a biological impossibility that treats the audience like gullible children. Taylor is a woman who has adult children. She is a grandmother. The show treats menopause not as a biological certainty, but as a mere suggestion that can be waved away by the magical, potent seed of Deacon Sharp. It is a grotesque infantilization of a mature woman. We are forced to watch Taylor, a woman of science, react to this news not with the appropriate medical skepticism or terror at the high-risk nature of such a condition, but with the wide-eyed wonder of a naive teenager. The writers have stripped her of her intellect, her medical background, and her dignity, reducing her to a blushing vessel for Deacon's legacy. It is undeniable that this narrative choice actively erases decades of character development. Taylor has survived shootings, kidnappings, and profound psychological trauma, yet she is now reduced to a walking, talking miracle womb, giggling over a sonogram at an age where she should be planning her retirement. The geography of Los Angeles and the non-existent workplace HR departments are often cited as the show's greatest logical leaps, but they pale in comparison to the magical, time-reversing properties of the Forrester-adjacent reproductive system. But the true malice of this writing is not found in Taylor's impossible miracle. It is found in the deliberate, cruel juxtaposition of her storyline with Daphne Rose Walton's profound tragedy. While Taylor is being handed a biological impossibility on a silver platter, Daphne is sitting in another sterile room in the exact same hospital, receiving the devastating confirmation of her infertility. I maintain that this is not a coincidence. It is a calculated, mean-spirited narrative device. The writers are explicitly contrasting the blessed Taylor with the broken Daphne to maximize the melodramatic suffering. Daphne's phantom symptoms, the fatigue, the stomach flutters, were weaponized against her, building her hope only to crush it in the most humiliating way possible. To watch Daphne, a young woman who desperately wants to build a family with Carter, be denied the very thing that is casually and impossibly handed to Taylor is a masterclass in narrative cruelty. The raw, visceral pain of infertility is a reality for millions of women, and to use it merely as a dark backdrop to highlight the shiny, absurd miracle of Taylor's pregnancy is deeply offensive. The writers do not care about exploring the psychological depths of Daphne's grief. They only care about using her tears as a contrasting color on their messy, illogical canvas. It is a fundamental betrayal of the character and the audience. We are expected to feel happy for Taylor while Daphne's dreams are shattered, but all I feel is a profound burning contempt for the people typing these scripts. The transition from the hospital to Il Giardino is where the show's reliance on lazy mechanics truly shines. Taylor, armed with her impossible secret, waltzes into the restaurant to deliver the news to Deacon. Let us pause to consider the pathetic reality of Deacon Sharp. I am baffled by anyone who argues that Deacon is a romantic lead worthy of this level of narrative investment. He is a textbook opportunist, a man who has spent decades bouncing between prison cells, broom closets, and the beds of vulnerable women. Yet, the show insists on framing him as the ultimate prize, the virile patriarch who can magically impregnate a post-menopausal woman. The scene at Il Giardino is drenched in unearned sentimentality. Deacon is wiping down the bar, playing the role of the reformed proprietor, when Taylor drops the bomb. The moment Taylor utters the words, Deacon is so stunned that he drops his wine glass. The glass shatters on the floor, a heavy-handed, utterly cliché metaphor for the shattering of their current reality. It is a moment ripped straight from a 1980s soap opera playbook, devoid of any modern nuance or psychological realism. Deacon's reaction is framed as a mixture of shock and profound awe, as if he has just been touched by the divine. He cannot believe that he and Taylor share an eternal bond. I maintain that this eternal bond is nothing more than a narrative shackle, chaining two characters together in a storyline that neither makes sense nor serves their historical trajectories. The writers want us to swoon over Deacon's tear-filled eyes, but all I see is a desperate attempt to legitimize a romance that was born out of betrayal and manipulation. And then of course we have the pièce de résistance of narrative laziness, the lurking villain in the shadows. Sheila Carter, the eternal boogeyman of Los Angeles, is hiding in the dimly lit corners of Il Giardino, eavesdropping on this intimate confession. How many times must we watch the same betrayal before we stop calling it a misunderstanding and start calling it pathology? The sheer logistical absurdity of Sheila constantly being able to lurk unseen in a public restaurant, mere feet away from the people she is supposedly stalking, is an insult to our intelligence. Does Il Giardino not have security? Does Deacon, a man who knows Sheila's dangerous capabilities better than anyone, not check his own premises? The show relies on these magical, invisible cloaks of convenience to move the plot forward because the writers are too lazy to construct a plausible sequence of events. As Sheila overhears the news of Taylor's pregnancy, we are forced to witness the total, catastrophic regression of her character. For months, the show has teased a potential redemption arc for Sheila. We were led to believe that she had genuinely changed, that she was capable of restraint. Even Finn and Taylor herself had begun to recognize a psychological shift in her behavior. But the moment the writers need a villain to threaten a baby, all of that nuanced character work is instantly incinerated. Sheila's reaction to the pregnancy news is not one of complex grief or conflicted anger. It is an immediate, psychotic pivot to murderous rage. She feels deeply betrayed because she wanted a real family with Deacon, and her twisted logic dictates that if she cannot have happiness, Taylor will not be allowed to keep the child. This is where the show's moral bankruptcy reaches its zenith. The writers are once again resorting to their favorite, most misogynistic trope, pitting two women against each other over the seed of a mediocre man, with one woman literally threatening the reproductive safety of the other. Sheila's vow to destroy Taylor's unborn child is not shocking. It is exhaustingly predictable. It is a recycled plotline from decades past, dusted off and repackaged for a new generation of viewers, who are apparently expected to suffer from collective amnesia. The idea that Sheila, a woman who has already committed countless atrocities, is now going to launch a terror campaign against a pregnant woman in her 60s is so absurd, so deeply offensive, that it defies rational analysis. I maintain that the show's treatment of Sheila Carter is actively regressive. She is not a character. She is a blunt instrument used by the writers to inject artificial stakes into storylines that are otherwise dying of inertia. By having Sheila vow to target Taylor's pregnancy, the writers are explicitly telling the audience that women are only valuable and only vulnerable when they are carrying a child. The safety of Taylor's womb becomes the central conflict, reducing her entire identity to that of a maternal victim waiting to be rescued. Deacon is thrust into the role of the hyper-masculine protector, preparing for a breathtaking battle to save his magical offspring. It is a repugnant, patriarchal fantasy that has no place in modern storytelling. We must also address the sheer hypocrisy of the characters involved. Taylor, a woman who has spent her life analyzing the psychological motivations of others, is completely oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadows. She is so consumed by her miraculous fertility that she loses all situational awareness. Deacon, who claims to love Taylor, has consistently underestimated Sheila's capacity for violence, putting Taylor in direct peril. And yet, the narrative frames them as tragic romantic heroes, rather than foolish, reckless adults who are entirely responsible for the mess they find themselves in. The audience is expected to cheer for Deacon as he steps up to protect Taylor, completely ignoring the fact that his infidelity and poor judgment are the direct catalyst for Sheila's murderous relapse. The contrast between the show's past and its current state is stark and undeniable. In its golden era, this program occasionally flirted with genuine psychological realism. Characters made mistakes, but those mistakes were grounded in recognizable human emotion. Today, what once had a shred of psychological realism has devolved into pure, insulting laziness. Characters do not act based on their established histories or logical motivations. They act based on the immediate, desperate needs of the plot. If the plot requires Taylor to be pregnant at 60, she is pregnant. If the plot requires Daphne to be infertile to create a sad contrast, she is infertile. If the plot requires Sheila to forget her redemption and become a baby-killing monster again, she becomes a monster. There is no connective tissue, no respect for continuity, and no regard for the audience's investment. I harbor a genuine disdain for the portion of the fandom that accepts these mediocre, recycled storylines with a shrug and a smile. To excuse this writing as just a soap opera is to be complicit in the degradation of the genre. It is intellectual cowardice to lower our standards so drastically that we accept biological impossibilities and character assassinations as the price of admission. We should be demanding better. We should be demanding stories that respect the complexities of womanhood, that treat infertility with the gravity it deserves, and that do not rely on the constant, repetitive demonization of the same characters to generate suspense. The impending storyline, Deacon's desperate battle to protect his pregnant, geriatric lover from his psychotic, stalking ex-wife, is a narrative wasteland. It will undoubtedly feature endless scenes of Deacon looking conflicted, Taylor looking frightened and clutching her stomach, and Sheila peering through various bushes and windows across the greater Los Angeles area. We will be subjected to dramatic monologues about the miracle of life, while Daphne's profound grief is quietly swept under the rug, forgotten by a writing staff that has the attention span of a gnat. The magical revolving door of Forrester Creations' CEO position is ridiculous, yes, but the magical, infinitely regenerating wombs of the Logan and Hayes women are a specific brand of misogynistic fantasy that I can no longer tolerate in silence. The truth is, the writers have backed themselves into a corner of their own making. By relying so heavily on shock value and impossible twists, they have destroyed the foundational reality of their own universe. There are no stakes when biology can be rewritten on a whim. There is no tension when villains are simply activated and deactivated like faulty robots. The collision of Taylor's pregnancy, Daphne's infertility, and Sheila's violent jealousy is not a dramatic climax. It is the death rattle of a show that has completely lost its way. I maintain that this current arc is the most indefensible, morally bankrupt storyline the show has produced in a decade. It is a profound insult to women, a mockery of medical science, and a testament to the sheer, unadulterated laziness of a writing room that has clearly given up. We must stop giving them a pass. We must stop pretending that dropping a wine glass in a faux Italian restaurant is the height of dramatic television. We must hold them accountable for the wreckage they have made of these characters. Taylor Hayes deserves better than to be a medical anomaly. Daphne Rose Walton deserves better than to be a tragic prop. And the audience, above all, deserves better than this relentless, insulting drivel. I will continue to bear witness, I will continue to dissect every illogical, offensive choice they make, and I will not rest until the absolute absurdity of this show is laid bare for all to see. The verdict is final. This narrative is a catastrophic failure, and it is time we all stop pretending otherwise.